The movie begins with a panicked gunman calling out to his daughter, Lisa. Shortly after, he discovers a zombie-like creature feeding on his daughter. He pleads with the creature to stop, but it doesn't, leaving him no choice but to kill it. However, the zombie resurrects, forcing the man to blow its head off. The scene then shifts to a lovely couple, Ida and Albin, waking up in the morning. Albin's father tells him that he has found a cottage deep in the forest, abandoned for years, where they can spend their weekend holidays. He assures Albin that the cottage is well furnished and has everything they might need. Ida, who runs a salon and is self-dependent, sets out the next day with Marie, Linnea, and Tove for the forest cottage to spend their holidays. On the way, they see Simon, Ida's brother, standing by the roadside. He asks if he can join them, but Ida refuses and tells him to follow in Albin's car as she doesn't know the way ahead. So Simon gets into Albin's car, where he meets Marcus, who is also joining them for the weekend trip. Since Albin knows the route, he leads the way. After a long and tiring journey, they finally arrive at the cottage hidden in the woods. Marcus, a mischievous guy, becomes excited upon seeing the girls and remarks that this weekend is going to be very interesting. Moments later, on their way to the cottage, they spot an armed gunman standing in the distance. Simon grows uneasy and asks the gunman to reveal himself, but the stranger gunman gives no response and walks away, leaving Simon frustrated. Brushing it off, the group heads to the cottage, only to find it locked from the inside, which leaves them disappointed. Then, Albin removes his bag and explains that he can unlock the door himself. Meanwhile, Marcus secretly calls Marie and heads to the backyard with her. Together, they plan to scare Albin and the others. Marcus asks Marie to enter the abandoned house through the back window and unlock the door from inside to frighten the rest of them. At first, Marie is reluctant, but after Marcus insists repeatedly, she changes her mind and sneaks into the house alone. Inside the rotting house, Marie finds nothing but suffocating darkness, which unnerves her. She discovers a candle, lights it, and begins searching for the main door. However, instead of focusing on her task, she notices a trapdoor hidden in the floorboards. Overcome by curiosity, she opens it and finds a basement beneath. Against her better judgment, Marie descends into the basement, candle in hand, and begins exploring. After finding nothing useful, she decides to leave. But just as she turns back, a strange noise catches her attention. Upstairs, Albin successfully unlocks the front door, and everyone enters the house one after another. Linnea opens a door only to find Marie on the other side, startling the group. Marcus reveals that it was his idea to surprise them. Meanwhile, Simon and Tove become captivated by one another and soon slip into another room under the pretense of exploring, where they begin making love. Marie confides in Marcus that she isn't feeling well, so she retreats back into the house. Meanwhile, Ida, Albin, and the others party joyfully, praising Albin and Ida for choosing such an exciting location for their trip, but Marie remains withdrawn, haunted by the memory of the basement and the dark entity she sensed there. Later, she goes to the bathroom, only to find the tap dry with no water supply. Trying to calm herself, she swallows a pill, then sits on the toilet, only to realize with horror that she is bleeding instead of urinating. Terrified, Marie checks her eyes in the mirror and sees them gradually turning red. Before she can react further, she collapses on her way back to the group. Around this time, Tove's phone dies, so she plugs it into charge and heads to the bathroom. She finds it occupied, but Marie doesn't respond to her. Frustrated, Tove demands an answer, only for a transformed, zombie-like Marie to suddenly attack. Marie rips off Tove's upper lip, infecting her in the process. Bloodied and screaming, Tove tumbles down the stairs, shocking Linnea and Ida. Moments later, Marie descends after her, spitting blood onto Linnea's face. Just then, Simon rushes in, knocks Marie down, and begins pummeling her. Later, he helps Albin tie Marie to the door to restrain her. Linnea and Ida bandage Tove's mutilated mouth, unaware that the infection is already spreading through her body. Marcus, still clueless about the chaos unfolding, enters the room and starts wiping blood from Marie's face. Suddenly, there is a loud knock at the door, escalating the tension. Albin answers and finds the same armed man they had seen earlier. The gunman asks if everything inside is all right and demands to be let in. Though Albin insists everything is fine, the stranger forces his way inside. He immediately notices Marie's transformation. Snapping his fingers in front of her unresponsive face, he coldly declares that she is already dead inside and warns the group to get rid of her. Shocked, Albin and his friends demand an explanation. The gunman then tells his own story. A few days earlier, he, his wife Karen, and their daughter Lisa had come to these woods for a holiday. While he went fishing, Karen and Lisa wandered into the forest to collect mushrooms, where they stumbled upon this very sinister house. He doesn't know exactly what happened to them, but he claims their eyes told the whole story. He recalls how his grandfather used to warn him about the creatures that live beneath the ground, beings who grow enraged when trespassers enter their domain. According to the legend, their gaze can steal your soul. The gunman reveals that before his daughter Lisa died, she whispered to him that she and her mother had gone into the basement of the house. He insists that Marie is no longer alive and that evil now controls her body. The only way to prevent further infection is to burn her. Meanwhile, Marcus goes to check on Tove, who has been left in another room. He sees her still breathing and unaware of the danger, removes her bandages. Heartbroken by her condition, he breaks down in tears. Soon the infected Tove suddenly attacks him, causing him to flinch. Not long after, she rises from the couch with monstrous strength and attacks, trying to bite Marcus's neck. Marcus struggles, but Tove toys with him cruelly, smashing his head against a table lamp as his terror deepens. The gunman enters the room just in time and shoots Tove in the head, but she manages to escape through the window despite being hit by the bullet. Simon decides to leave the house, not caring for the others, and Linnea chooses to go with him. They come into the outhouse, where Simon stumbles upon an axe and hands it to Linnea while he takes up a shovel for himself. There, they discover a heap of dead birds, which intensifies the eerie atmosphere. Unable to bear it any longer, Simon and Linnea hurry out of the house and head toward their car. Meanwhile, the armed man who had chased Tove into the forest is violently attacked and infected by her lurking presence. Enraged, he topples her to the ground and stabs her repeatedly before slitting her throat and finally decapitating her. Later, the gunman returns to the outhouse and ends his own life before transforming into an evil creature. As night falls, it becomes extremely difficult for Simon and Leanne to navigate through the dense woods. Simon helps her up, but notices her eyes turning red, which terrifies him and forces him to back away in fear. Panicked, he yells at her to stay away and in desperation, strikes her with the shovel, knocking her unconscious. Shaken, Simon lights a cigarette, regretting the decision he made in compulsion. In the heavy downpour, he begins digging a grave for her. Meanwhile, outside the house, Tove's decapitated body lies drenched in the rain, and Albin sees it from inside. Marcus's condition gradually deteriorates, so Albin offers him a cup of water, but Marcus refuses it. Just then, Ida pushes open the door and discovers that Marie has escaped. Suddenly, Marie catches Albin by the hair and rips him out. A moment later, a stone crashes through the broken window, terrifying both Albin and Ida. Soon after, Marie, covered in blood from head to toe, climbs in through the window and attacks Albin. Albin also retaliates and hurls her onto the table, knocking her down, but she quickly gets up, charges at Ida, and spits blood onto her face. Meanwhile, Albin rushes in and pushes Marie aside before stabbing her repeatedly in the throat. However, she resurrects and knocks him down, trying desperately to infect him. At that precise moment, Marcus storms into the room and drives an iron bar into Marie's head. Despite this, Marie manages to bite Marcus on the neck, infecting him. Consumed with vengeance, Albin crushes Marie's head with a stone, finally killing her for good. Outside, in the pouring rain, Simon digs a grave and buries Linnea's body in it. Afterward, he retrieves his bag and leaves. Inside, Ida urges Albin that they need to escape immediately. In the meantime, Marcus turns evil. As Ida and Albin prepare to leave, Marcus suddenly sits upright, making their blood run cold. They rush outside, but the downpour blocks their way, forcing them back into the house. They retreat upstairs as the possessed Marcus follows and tries to break into their room. Ida seizes a sharp object and plunges it into Marcus's forehead. Moments later, Simon returns to the house and finds everything in shambles. Lifting a sheet, he discovers Marie's mutilated body, a horrific sight that unsettles him deeply. He begins searching for the others, but hears a noise upstairs. With an axe in hand, he rushes up the stairs, calling out for Ida, his sister. Though Ida hears him, she cautiously asks if the police are with him. Avoiding her question, Simon yells at her to open the door and let him in. Meanwhile, Marcus emerges in the corridor and stalks Simon before shoving him out of the window. Gravely injured and bleeding, Simon crawls to get up but runs into Linnea, now turned evil, and begs her to forgive him. But she ignores his plea and bites him, sealing his fate. Upstairs, Ida and Albin remain trapped. Albin calls Marcus to make sure if it is he who knocks on the door. He turns out to be right when Marcus's phone rings outside. So Albin opens the window and thinks of escaping through it, but it is too high for them to flee through, forcing them to search for another way out. Finally, Albin risks opening the door, only to find Marcus waiting outside. Before Marcus can attack, Albin strikes him with a fire extinguisher, knocking him out. They then rush toward the main door but are stopped on the stairs by Linnea, who forces them to retreat once more. She comes up the stairs while stalking Albin, who steps on one of her arms and chops it off with an axe. As soon as Linnea tries to get back to her feet, Albin strikes her in the back repeatedly until Linnea gives up the ghost. Meanwhile, Marcus arrives and snatches the axe from Albin, but accidentally falls off the stairs. Seizing the opportunity, Ida and Albin manage to flee into a room. A moment later, Marcus also arrives while chasing them. Terrified, Ida and Albin lock themselves inside a narrow cabin. Outside, bloodthirsty Marcus begins tearing down the cabin, terrifying the couple. Desperate Albin begins breaking the floorboard and soon falls into the basement. Marcus almost brings down the wall and tries to get hold of Ida, who escapes into the basement in time. Albin urges his wife to go away, and he will come later. Then, he musters up his courage and sits against the door while Marcus growls from upstairs. As soon as Marcus jumps into the basement, Albin slides a stool under his body, which passes through Marcus's body. Not long after, Albin also falls unconscious because of bleeding too much. Ida desperately looks for a way out, but encounters Simon in her way. She attacks him with a sharp object, but Simon doesn't retaliate. However, she lures him into a room and attempts to flee, but is dragged back into the room by Simon. He attacks her without even touching her, as if he still remembers that Ida is his sister. Simon throws that knife and goes all over Ida. Then he pours blood into her mouth, infecting her. Albin regains consciousness and finds Marcus standing before him. He quickly gets back to his feet and grabs a sledgehammer from a nearby cabin. Then he strikes Marcus with it, ending his game. Afterward, he goes into a room and finds Ida lying infected while Simon stands nearby. Simon rushes in and charges at him, causing Albin to flee through the window. Albin retreats into the outhouse and grabs the gunman's gun and begins waiting for Simon to show up. A moment later, Simon arrives with an intent to kill Albin, but he is killed instead when Albin shoots him in the head. After getting rid of Simon, Albin gets back to Ida, but it is too late as Ida starts becoming the evil. This leaves Albin shattered, causing him to cry his heart out in one of the corners of the sinister house. He goes into one of the rooms and sits on a chair. Shortly afterward, Ida arrives in the room, calling out to Albin. She steps closer to him and smears his face with her blood, and then backs away. However, the very next moment, she charges at Albin, trying to make him one of her kind, but Albin manages to break free and rushes out of the room. Ida also chases him into a room and smears his face with her contaminated blood. Albin pushes her over, and with a heavy heart, he topples the bookshelf onto her, burying her under it. While getting out of the house, Albin spots a trapdoor in the floorboard. He opens it and hears a noise coming from the basement. He immediately locks it, but to his astonishment, the door is sent flying by an entity living there. Soon the evil entity crawls out of the basement, forcing Albin to flee. Shortly, the evil entity approaches Albin, but he closes his eyes, avoiding the direct eye contact with it. So the entity walks away. Meanwhile, Albin rushes and turns off the light, making it harder for the entity to see. Seizing the moment, he stabs it in the breast, causing it to fall off the stairs. Later, Albin throws a heavy box at her, crushing her under it. Afterward, he bids a final goodbye to Ida, who is lying crushed under the bookshelf, and leaves the cursed house, marking the end of the movie.